I started to do my own research, and under this new light, and I just completely got it. It was like so obvious. How could I never seen this before?
Well, I'm here with Leonardo. We're starting this series again of asking people how they came out of the watchtower and how they came into a relationship with God. What's their story? How did it begin? How did it end? So, Leo, go ahead and just introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are.
Right. My name is Leonardo. I am a Brazilian former Jehovah Witness. Grew up. It was very recent that I left. Was actually almost exactly 1 year ago,
Wow.
and yeah, I've converted to Catholicism. I'm a Roman Catholic now, and yeah, it was quite a trip. It was a lot to tell, a lot of insights, a lot of helpful. I hope so. A lot of help for people who are still Jehovah Witness, who maybe want to leave but are afraid or something like that.
That's
Or
yeah,
even for people who are not religious. Yeah.
yeah. A year is yeah. That's quick, man. Quick turnaround. So, so what happened? Did you grow up in it? Did you convert? How did that happen?
So when I was born, my parents were Bible students for with the Jehovah Witness. They were studying the Bible with the Jehovah Witness, and I never got to experience anything outside of that organization. I was raised there, and that was the only religion I ever been to, and quite accepted that it was the truth. Never even thought about the possibility of not being the truth. And I was very hardcore Jehovah Witness. I was not like your average uh, go to the Kingdom Hall and it's all a couple of hours a month of field service. I was like regular pioneer. I did some missionary work. I was very extreme also, like in the rules. I like to follow the rules. Eventually, if I started to get a little bit more flexible, my conscience would accuse me, and I was like, I have to change. Going to talk to the others and everything. So I was very. It was a huge shock for the community in my city, that when they found out there was a Catholic now, like a lot of people accused me of being mentally ill. Some people say that I was doing that because I found a girl, and that was the reason. And so yeah, a lot of people tell me like, but you're so smart and you're so intelligent and you knew so much, and I was like, maybe that's the reason I'm leaving, but it's hard to talk to them. So anyway, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. As I said, I was baptized very young, and I also became a publisher very young. So they have these steps. You're probably familiar with that. First, you became a publisher, so you start going door to door. And then after that, you get baptized, and hooray, you're saved. Or not. Well, anyway, I got baptized when I was 9, and I became a publisher, I think, maybe 2 years before that, or probably like 7 or 8
Wow, nine's
when I
young.
started.
That's really young.
Yeah,
I didn't know they
yeah,
did
yeah.
it that
Don't
young.
don't baptize babies though.
Not
That's
yet.
wrong. So I was baptized when I was 9. And I remember that there was an unwritten rule about baptizing children before they were 10. It was kind of like this in my region. Like if they're over 10, then it's okay. If they're lower than 10, they have to wait. But the way that I was showing like a little bit of knowledge, even though at that very young age, they kind of went with it, and I got baptized. So after that, I was always liked to prepare myself well to the meetings, to do my best in field service. When I was about 16 to 18, which is the age where you have to like figure out what you're gonna do with your life. I was very, they do a lot of fear mongering. Like the world is about to end. The Great Tribulation is it's right here, so
Mhm.
think about it. So I didn't went to high school. I didn't did any plans for the future. I just focused on doing everything I could at the moment. Just a noteworthy thought that I had just now is that I know a lot of people from different religions who also abdicate their entire lives, but purely for love of God. Like as I mentioned, I know monks. We'll get there to the monks, but I know monks, and some of them are very young, and they already open all of their life, open up all of their life to Jesus. They only serve Jesus, and that's all they do, out of love for God. And this strategy of the Jehovah's Witnesses of keep saying like the world is about to end, kind of steals from their followers this possibility of saying that, I'm doing this sheer love for God, and that's all. But I genuinely like to think, like, if I introspect and think that I was not doing that out of the end of the world, but of course it was something that they keep bombarding you with. So I didn't went to high school. I just did all I could as I was young. Yeah, so in Brazil we have like mandatory school that is until you're 18, and after that you can go to university if you want. So I didn't want to because I
Okay.
thought I was going. And they were really kind of like strict on it. Like a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, pretty much, it was pretty much not allowed. If you went to a university, you were seen as a bad Jehovah's Witness, as someone to be avoided, even if you were not committing any sin at all. That slowly started to change around my time, but when I was 18, that was kind of the mood. If you're going to university, why are you going to university? It's a place, it's a sinful place. You're going to give all your energy to the word. What are you thinking? So it was kind of the environment. So I didn't went. I did missionary work. I went to the Amazon rainforest. I went to the south of Brazil, like the deep south of Brazil as well. I learned Asian language from IT, and did all of that, like put all of my efforts, all of my energy serving them, which of course I thought I was serving God. When I was 18, yeah, when I was 18, I think I don't remember. You probably know this better than I do, or remember better than I do, but they changed the overlap in generation stuff.
Is it
And
2015? Yeah.
15, so I was I'm terrible with math, but I was kind of like 17, yeah, 17, 18 years old. Yeah, so exactly when I was 18 years old, they did that, and it was a huge shock for me because it was like, well, I was just like, my life was all about those old guys are about to die, and when they do, the war is going to end. And now suddenly we got overtime, and I was a little bit disappointed. But it was the first time where I, questioned it. Like, is this really true? It doesn't seem right. But then again, the psychological conditioning made me think that I was just lacking faith or doubting God. You have to be obedient. You have to be submissive. So there I went, and so I kept working on my Jehovah's Witnesses activities until. But I did got some problems. Uh, I had like a terrible breakup. Got very very depressed. Started to drink a lot. I started to become addicted to pornography as well, and all of those things combined like destroyed my mental health. And on top of that, I had to go through a judicative commission. Is that the English term?
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to go through that, and I really felt like I was not in touch with God. I was so far away from God, and even though I was not disfellowshipped, I was still never being able to get that feeling of being in a relationship with God. Well, I got better. Things got better. I stopped drinking. I stopped taking meds. My mental health improved a lot. And I just had an opportunity to do English school in Ireland. So I went. So I left. I went just by myself. There was nobody there. And of course, the brothers, the Jehovah's Witnesses there, they were very welcoming. They were very helpful and everything. So they kind of welcomed me there. And they were like almost my only friends. Outside of them, it was just people from the school, which I really didn't bonded with, and people from work, which I bonded a little bit, but it's not the same. So you know that their brotherhood is very, very strong. When I was in Ireland, there was a friend of mine for 2 years at the time that we were discussing because he was, when we were kids, we met in the Kingdom Hall. He was studying. He never got baptized, but he became a publisher but never got baptized. Now he was a Catholic. And so we used to have these conversations of trying to debate our theologies.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize at the time that I was just copy pasting what I saw from jw.org, but that's what I was doing. But I've never managed to convince him or even convince myself that I was right, he was wrong. And so I kept feeling this, that I was away from God, I'm away from God, and my prayers were non-existent. And when I prayed, it was something so automatic that it was like I was writing two phrases and saying it all over again. So one time I came across an app. It's called Hallow app. It's a Catholic app about prayers and meditation. And I just thought it was interesting. I started to look at it, and I saw a prayer, a nighttime prayer. It was night. I was alone in my room. And I said, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm just not going to say anything about Mary or something like that. And I started to read it. I don't even remember the prayer. I know it was not a famous prayer. It was not like some Our Father, Hail Mary, or anything like that. It was just another prayer. And I decided to fell on my knees and burst in tears. And I completely felt like God was listening, not only listening, but talking to me. So one thing I asked God was, reveal yourself to me. I want to know who you are. And after that moment, I started to get on a personal mission to prove that Jehovah's Witnesses were right. So the path that I got in that led me to leave the organization was not because I committed a sin and was kicked out, or because I was rebelling against them or angry with some decision. It was simply trying to prove them right. Right. So I started to study their theology, their doctrines again. And the first thing I went into was the 1914 prophecies. So I started to find a lot of contradiction, a lot of what shocked me the most was intellectual dishonesty. Because for people to claim to be the truth and that lie is something that belongs to the devil, it shouldn't be dishonest. You shouldn't have to be intellectually dishonest. You shouldn't have to distort things to prove your point. If you have the truth, then you can just present the truth. You don't have to, shape things around it. So this is the truth. It's the truth. It's pretty simple.
Hmm.
And so I started to notice. How he was and how much it changed throughout the years. And that is pretty much the foundation of all of their beliefs. Because if 1914 was not the year where Jesus became king, it was not if in 1914 Jesus did not appointed people on earth to be his new religion, then the entire Jehovah's Witnesses story falls. Like it's a house of cards. If you take out the 1914, everything collapses. And so I started to study that deeply, and I noticed all these contradictions, and then I saw that the
So what kind of
math didn't add
contradictions?
up.
What kind of
So for
contradictions did you
example,
see?
yeah, for example, the math doesn't add up. It's interesting to know that even very experienced Jehovah's Witnesses, they struggle to explain 1914 for people.
It's not like it's
They basically,
confusing or anything.
most of the time, what they would do is that, if you don't get it now, it's okay. We can come through it later, and then they never go. It's like your mom saying, "Oh, we're gonna go back for those candies later," and then they just go and never come back. A lot of people don't. I'm positive that more than half Jehovah's Witnesses cannot explain 1914 prophecy. So the math doesn't add up about the years that they need to get to 1914. The year that they take as the beginning of the counting, it's not the year that Jerusalem was destroyed. So we have so much archaeological evidence and historical evidence that it was not the year that they say. There is like a 30 years gap, I think, between the year that we know it is and the year that we claim it is. Another thing is that the way they get to that equation, like they pick up one text from the Old Testament, I think it's Leviticus, that says each day is a year. Then
Yeah.
they pick up Daniel, and then they go to the Revelations. So it's an intertextuality that just doesn't make any sense. It
Makes
feels so forced.
no sense. And enforced is a great way to say it. It is. It's grabbing random verses from different locations. Yeah, it's Ezekiel, I think 4, where they say a day of a year, which which makes no sense when you think about it. If that's supposed to be a rule, as they say, why isn't it applied to every time there's a prophecy about 7 days or 10 or 300 or whatever? Like when Jesus says, in 3 days I will rebuild this temple, well, why didn't it mean 3 years? I thought that was a rule. Yeah, it's all completely taken out of context. It makes no difference. And the thing is, you can just invent this. It's not that hard. I can go through the Bible right now, grab a whole bunch of verses randomly, and come up with some date that the year 2025, everything is over. It's not that hard to do. It's pretty easy. But unfortunately, this is what witnesses have done.
Yeah. So from up to them, I was only searching on their own website. I was not going to look for anything from the outside. I was just plainly searching on their own website. And when, of course, I was checking the historical facts and all, but not like going through IHateJehovahWitnesses.com and trying to read what they say. I was just plainly looking for historical evidence that supported their claims, which I didn't find any. And so after I noticed this, I started to think, okay, so maybe I should actually go after outer sources. And once again, I said to myself, if Jehovah's Witnesses are the truth, why should I be afraid of listening to someone who says that they're not the truth? I like to use an analogy with my friends when they ask me about it. I say, like, imagine one day you get home and your wife, and there's someone outside your house saying that your wife cheated on you, right? So your wife gets out of your house, she grabs you, take you inside, shuts the door, slams the door, and says, never talk to that person ever again. If you talk to that person, you don't love me. Now that will raise you some suspicions. On the other hand, if your wife says, well, why don't you both come, sit down, and let this person speak, what evidence did he have? Because I didn't cheat on you, and I can prove it. So this is kind of the line of thought that I was thinking, like, if Jehovah's Witnesses really are the truth, I'm not someone who is going to be, how can I say that, easily fooled. I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to have a critical look over it, and I'm going to be able to defend my religion. And so I started to watching a guy doing scratches on YouTube.
Wonder who that was.
Yeah, and I believe that the first video was exactly talking about 1914, or was it the Trinity? I don't remember now. But you do have a video about 1914 specifically, don't you?
I do. It's one of my first, which I'm probably going to redo it eventually. But yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's one of your first videos. I know that. So yeah, this was the video that I watched, and I remember I was camping at the time. I was camping. I still had phone signal. It was late at night. I was alone, nothing to do, and I just started to go on YouTube, and I found your channel, and then started to take a look at it. And well, everything you said was pretty insightful. And the other day when I went back to town, I started to do my own research, and under this new light, and I just completely got it. It was like so obvious. How could I never seen this before? So it's so obvious. So as my personality wouldn't allow me to stay there not believing, I couldn't be like a, how do they call it, a PIMO, I think, physically in, mentally
PO,
out.
like you physically in, mentally out. Yeah.
I just couldn't do that. I had to come up and say, look, I don't agree with you guys, and I'm leaving. And that's what I did. So I tried to gather as much of information as I could so that I could defend myself, because I knew that I was going to be interrogated. And I also wanted to show those three elders who were going to talk to me what I found, like, look, can't you guys agree with me? And a little bit, and so I did that, and I went, and they asked me to go, and I went. But a little bit before I went, this friend of mine, I told him, like, look, I'm not going to be Jehovah's Witness anymore. And he was like, yeah, so go watch a mass. And I'm like, I'll never watch the mass before. I don't know if Catholic Church is going to be the way. He's like, go watch a mass. But he said, go watch a Latin mass, because he's a traditionalist. And so he said, go watch a Latin mass. So I look it up, and the closest one was like 14 kilometers away from where I was. I only had a bicycle, but I said, whatever. So I went. It was an adventure, and countryside of Ireland, a lot of rain, in a bicycle. And I got there, it was a monastery. All right, it was a monastery. It's called Silver Stream Priory. It's a beautiful place. They do upload their adorations on YouTube, so it's very, very beautiful to see. And they're all completely Latin oriented, Latin rites. So they don't do the Novus Ordo, they don't do the new mass or the new calendar, the new rules. They follow the rule of Saint Benedict and the traditions of the Roman Church. And so I went there. I was late. Mass had already started. I was dripping sweat. I had a raincoat full of rain that I took it off, and I had no idea what was going on. So I just went inside. They have a very small oratory. They're very simple and humble, as you expect monks to be. And there was a nun there. There was a lot of people in the mass because it was Sunday mass, so it's almost full. I think they can take like 20 or 30 people in their oratory. It was almost full. And there was a nun there. She saw me and she called me and she put me on the only available space, which was a stair right like on the most front part of the oratory.
She did that on
Chair.
purpose.
So I sat there and I was just listening. And first thing I thought, watching that celebration, was that this was the first time that I saw someone adoring God, worshiping God. This is an act of worship that I've never witnessed it before. Because sitting down on and reading scriptural studies is not worshiping God. I think that the closest thing that Jehovah's Witnesses have of a liturgy is their songs, and it's not even close, to a mass. And so I was there. I watched the whole mass, and the priest came with the host to me, and I was just like, no, I can't eat it. And,
You're not anointed.
yeah. And it was so interesting that after the mass ended, they usually do like a cup of tea with the guests, and one of the monks received me. His name is Don Crisostom Maria, and I just started to tell my story to him, and he was so welcoming. He completely destroyed everything that I had, that I believed the Catholic Church to be. Just pedophiles and people who want money. I'm sorry if some words are going to get you demonetized.
You're fine.
So he completely changed my idea on the Catholic Church, and I just thought that was beautiful, and I wanted to be part of it. But this time, I wanted to study before I joined. I wanted to, be sure of what I'm getting into. And immediately he gave me this cross and also a rosary, and I started to pray the rosary before I went to talk to the others. So I started to pray the rosary every day, and I went and talked to the others, and praying the rosary gave me a lot of courage, and I was able to defend myself very well. And something that they say that it was just off for me is that when I started to show all of these things, I said, like, how can you completely trust the governing body when they have all of these changes in doctrine, and they also use of intellectual distortions, and their answer was, we don't completely trust them. And I just thought that I was never expecting to hear that from an elder. Like, isn't that lack of faith in God in your own doctrine?
Yeah.
But, that's what they said. And so I just like, okay, look, we're not going to get anywhere, because every time I was starting to prove a point, one of them was getting angry, and the other one was like saying, oh, but this verse says this. So it was pointless. And I just say, look, I don't want to make a fuss. I'm not going to try to convince other people to live with me. I made my own decision. The best I can say to someone who reaches out is just, look, do your own research. And so I went. And after that, I spoke to my family. Now, I was living in Ireland. My family was in Brazil. I have he's now 10, but at the time he was like 8 years old. My brother, a little brother. And it was very difficult for me to think that I wasn't going to be able to talk to him anymore. It was very painful to think that. But every time that I started to get anxious, and I started to get this pain, I remember the rosary, and I started praying the rosary, and just immediately disappeared, just completely trusting God. And deep down, I just think, well, if this is going to be my cross, if I'm going to lose my family, if it's for the love of God, then so be it. And at first, my parents have a terrible reaction. My mom thought that I had completely gone nuts, and that my father thought that I was just wanting to try a worldly life. Like, I don't know, it was never part of my personality, but maybe he thought that I just wanted to go hook up with girls or something like this, use drugs or whatever. Was not my objective. It was not something that I was going to do. I was just trying to worship God the right way. And but after a week, it was just a week, and my mom texted me, and it was starting to get a little bit more flexible. And they decided to not tell my brother. My brother doesn't even know up to date. He doesn't know that I'm not Jehovah's Witness anymore.
Wow.
It's not my call, but uh, in anyway, they started to talk to me again, and now even my father. I'm currently working in my father's company at daytime, and we have a good relationship, and we can talk to each other. It's just a little bit annoying when some Jehovah's Witnesses go there, and he's like, "You cannot talk to them. He's a brother." I was like, "Yeah, it's okay." uh, my friends were very, very angry at me. My Jehovah's Witnesses friends were very angry at me. They blame me for us not being able to hang out anymore. And well, recently one of my best friends from that time got married, and then another friend sent me the video and it's like, "Why are you not here?" I was like, "Wow, I wasn't invited. If I was invited, I would be there. It's just not about me. But don't worry, if I get married, you'll be invited." But it's pretty much like that. So it went like that, and then after that, it's not much about Jehovah's Witnesses anymore because I just started to study the Catholic doctrine and grow in faith. And now I'm a very active Catholic. Try to go to mass as frequent as possible, not only on Sundays. I prepare myself for mass as well. I have a Roman Missal. I prefer the traditional Latin mass, but I end up having to watch the new mass, which I'm absolutely fine with. It's also beautiful. And that's how I live. And also interesting, after my conversion, like immediately after my conversion, I was with that thinking that like only the Catholic Church it's the only true, and everyone outside it is, it's not going to be saved. But recent sermon speeches from the priests and everything that the church is doing has helped me to understand that we cannot limit salvation to a church or to a sacramental. I like to think that the Catholic Church, in its structure, not in its current situation, but in its structure, helps us to get saved. The sacraments are meant to help us to get there. But if God wants to save someone, it doesn't matter where that person was, what he do. It's up to God. So I started to look at Protestants and other Christians with a different eyes, with a little bit more of empathy and appreciation. And well, if as long as Jesus is God and he's being worshipped, I still think people should be Catholics, but I'm not with that judgment anymore. Not with that sectarism anymore. It's just,
No, that's a good way to think about it, and it's one of those things where people ask me a lot of times like, "Oh, are Catholics saved or Protestants saved?" It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. There are Protestants who are going to go to hell, and there are Catholics who are going to go to hell, because it's not about what church you're a part of. It matters where you are with God and where's your relationship with Him. And I think for many people, like you were saying about that structure and about the sacraments, that's what helps them in their relationship with God. That's what they need, because we all worship in different ways. And sometimes I think there's Protestants who are like, "Hey, this helps me in my relationship with God." And like you were saying, if we have the same God, you have the same gospel, it's who's to say that all of a sudden it's like, no, you have to be part of this group and that group. And, it's God's, I think God's bigger than that, but we get a little too, as humans, a little too argumentative, thinking we get lost in the woods. But something you said interesting, and by the way, praise God, it's amazing that you came out of that, and your whole story is amazing. Firstly, I just want to say, I'm just picturing you in Ireland, like sweaty after riding on a bike for 14 kilometers, soaking wet, going in there, young Brazilian guy going, and then marching up to the front by a nun. What was a sight, I bet. But you said you went to the Amazon on your mission. Like, I've never heard of anyone going there. I want to make so many jokes, like, how many trees do you go up and knock on? And I mean, but what? So tell me about that real quick.
All right, so Amazon in Brazil side of Amazon, it's pretty much everything is done by boats. You barely see any cars around. There are no highways connecting the towns. The only big city you will see is Manaus, which is the capital of the state, and Parintins, which is where I went, which is like I think it can be called a city, but it's a very small city. Everything else is towns, villages, sometimes an island with just one house, and everything is done by boat. So there are so many islands on the Amazon River. This city that I went to, Parintins, which is on the opposite side of Manaus. So Manaus is close to Bolivia, and Parintins is close to the shore, to the ocean. Which one is it? Atlantic Ocean, right? I'm not very
Yep.
good at geography. And in that the mayor of that city, he in that city district alone, there are 300 islands were habitated by people, and it's like the biggest of those islands have less than 1,000 population. So there are 300 islands with very low population spread around the river, and the only way to get there is by a boat. People there live an extremely simple life. Like they fish something big, they go to the Manaus, they sell it, and they spend the month with that money, and growing their own food and fishing their own food, and it's very simple. It's actually very beautiful to
Mm-hmm.
see how they live. Very in touch with nature and a different pace than we are. I think a lot of them are much happier than
Oh, I bet.
people who are richer.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's amazing, and the nature is it's so beautiful. The river is so big. I went in the dry season when the water is at its lowest, and at some points I was in the boat and looking in both directions. I could not see the horizon. There was only water. It was like an ocean. That's how big the Amazon River is. And when you get into the shore, into the where the boats stay, the bay, no, the port. Again to the port.
Yeah.
I went into the dry season, so the boat stops kind of like here, and then there is a giant platform where you walk for about 3 minutes until you get on a huge, very huge wall. And this wall has markings on it, like the plates with a year. Those were the highs of the river.
Mm.
So not only the river climbs all the way through the platform, but it climbs also this huge wall. And there were 2 years where it actually went inside the city.
Mm.
So it's so much water. And it was an amazing experience. I was able to visit an indigenous tribe, to swim with the dolphins, it's a sweetwater version of the dolphin, and overall to meet amazing people, even though they were Jehovah Witnesses, but they were so simple and so dedicated. Like, you could see their love for God, really, and it was very nice, very very good experience. It opened my mind a lot.
Mm. That's cool. It's the needs greater, I think, is one of the sayings so I've heard a lot of people on their experiences in that, and some say it was enriching for them. Others say it was kind of just the same, nothing happened. And some of them it was like, yeah, I left because of what I saw. They were people sitting around, nothing happened. But everyone's experience is different. So when you were in, you said it was the overlapping generation that really was that moment of something's not right, or was there anything else that was kind of eating at you where this doesn't make sense?
It was really that, because it was really like, you know it was such an important. It's not like changing something trivial. It was a fundamental part of their belief. It's not like something simple that you can just, well, okay, doesn't make much of a difference. It was extreme. I don't know how nobody else like got. Of course, other people got shocked as well, but I don't know how there was not like a massive exodus of Jehovah's Witnesses after that, because it was pretty much like saying, look, the world is gonna end tomorrow, and oh, you know what? I was not wrong. You got it wrong. When I say tomorrow, I meant 10 years from now. So, but after studying their history, I saw that they actually done that like 4 times before. So,
Yep.
yeah, here we are. It's gonna happen again.
Yeah, just give it time. I think they'll start date setting soon, but that's the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, you're right about how come more people didn't leave. How come it wasn't millions or all 8 million at that time? Right, because in 2014, it was, hey, we promise the world is ending because those who were alive and to see 1914, they will see the end. And then 1 year later, they said, hey, this is accurate truth. Those who saw 1914 won't see the end. Like, well, wait,
Yeah.
you just,
Yeah.
which one's right? Well, no, both are right. And that's what really gets me with witnesses. Like, you're seeing the truth right in front of your face, but I don't know if it's fear or arrogance or what the actual underlining issue is of why people can't see it. I mean, brainwashing, sure. I mean, this is a high control group, but what causes you to look at that and say, I don't care what the truth is, I just want to follow this? I think it's, my heart goes out, and I said, I think a lot of people are just beaten down. It's like anyone in a bad relationship where they know something is wrong, instead of you kind of saying, yeah, I know this is wrong, but I'm just so tired. I don't want to deal with it. It's whatever. And I do believe that's mainly the reason, is just most people go, well, I've been in this for 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever years. It's whatever. And unfortunately, that I think that's the case with most witnesses.
Yeah. Just one more and I'll get the jackpot.
Yep.
Something like that. I think that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are conditioned to believe that questioning the organization is the same as having lacking faith in God or lacking love for God.
Yeah.
They pretty much put that into your head. Look, these are the men God chose, and so if you start asking questions about them, you're not having faith in God. It's pretty much like this. They compare like questioning to rust in a chain.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to rust the foundation of your faith with questions.
Yet I'm sure now, it's like you can ask questions. I mean, you can go to the priest, you can go to the monk and ask all the questions you want, and they're going to give you an answer. It's very rare you ask a question that they say, "Oh, we don't know. We're going to put it on the shelf, or we'll come back to it later." It's unless it's some deep theological issue that people have struggled with for thousands of years. I mean, we know those, but for the most part, the average questions can be answered. But with witnesses, it's not. It's no, don't ask that, or just put it away, put it in the closet, and we'll come back to it later. But of course, you never come back to it later, and it's a shame, because I do think a lot of witnesses are smart people, and I want to come out and say, oh, they're all dumb. No, they're not. They're misled. And unfortunately, I wish more people that are in this, I want to say the Ex-Jew community, or the kind of the activism witness community, I wish they'd see that these people aren't stupid. They're lost. They're misled. One of the verses in Colossians where he goes, when he lists off the sins of people, he says, "As were you." And I think more witnesses need to see, the ex-witnesses need to see, yes, I was like that. I was believing this, and now I don't. And I don't want to mock them, and I don't want to spit on them. And I know they're treating me bad, they're shunning me, but I mean, you probably shunned people too when you were in and didn't know any better. So it's just one of those, you really have to take yourself completely out of the witnesses and not continue in the same mindset.
So interesting. My sister was this fellowship when I was 17, I think. And I treated her awfully. Like inhumanly. I didn't know exactly everything that happened. I will not share details because it's her life, not mine. But I treated her awfully, to the point where even as a extreme Jehovah's Witness, I was still so ashamed of how I treated her. Even without her showing signs of wanting to come back, I went and apologized. But it just goes to show, like, she was my sister. She is my sister, my own blood. We were raised together, and because of a doctrine, I was terrible. I was awful with her. And that's just sad. That's nothing to do with anything that Jesus teaches in the scriptures, and it has also nothing to do with the spirit of Christianity, like the very own concept of Christianity.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest damages witnesses do, is they paint Christians as this unloving group. You leave after feeling that or treating people like that, and you believe, oh, that's what God is like. That's what Jehovah's like. That's what Jesus is like, and it's the complete opposite. What they have is a fake love that's sold as real, and it's really torture. And I'll keep using the abusive relationship analogy. People in that will feel like, oh, this is real love. And speaking from experience, when you find someone that you really, really love, you understand the difference immediately and go, oh, this is real love. What I had was abusive. I did not know that, because in an abusive relationship, that's the whole point. You don't know any better. Oh man. Well, I'm glad you're obviously out of it. So yeah, you said your relationship with your family is decent, even though it's, obviously a bit touchy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was not going to live in the same house as them after I returned from Ireland, obviously because I was already living by myself, and I was just not going to get used to the living in your parents' house again. But mostly, the most important reason why I'm living in a flat of my own is because I want my time to worship God. I try to do the minor office. So there's the divine office, and I don't know if you know that
A
in
little
the
bit.
Catholic
Yeah.
Church.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is the minor office of Our Lady, which is kind of like a layman's version of the divine office. I try my best to do it. Of course, busy life, and I can't do it all the time. But I try to do it. Try to pray the Angelus prayer. I try to keep myself in a constant state of praying, because falling from grace is like very, very easy in the world we live in, where you're constantly surrounded by sin. And so I try to be very devout. I never take my cross out. I carry it around with me all the time. I have some images, some idol worship in my house, so I wouldn't be able to have it with them. Now the only issues are, like, sometimes I feel so happy when I go to a mass, or I feel so happy when something happens related to Catholicism, that I want to share with them. I can't. I
Yeah.
can't. But recently, I was able to show my mom. She watched with me a documentary about the life of Sister Claire Crock. She was a nun from Ireland who went to serve in
Yes.
Chile, I think.
Yes. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. And so my mom watched it, and surprisingly, she watched it through it all, even with all of the people kissing crosses and things like that. And she watched it through it all. And at the end, and the other day, she didn't say too much of the day. She just watched it with me. And the other day, she said, "Well, she was someone who lived for what she believed to be right, and I think that's very rare in people." And so she kind of like, I could feel that touched her in a way, because I was crying all throughout the documentary, very emotional with that story. Uh, but I think it was a good something. Maybe I still pray for my mom's conversion every day,
Absolutely.
and yeah, we can hope. But oh, even if that doesn't happen, I still believe that if God wants to save her, if she was just being controlled, couldn't manage to escape. That's what I think about Jehovah Witnesses who die for their faith. Like, maybe God saw something in that, and in His infinite mercy, He saved them. Doesn't mean that we cannot be saved. Just that their religion, first of all, is not healthy, as I said. Second of all, well, that should be the first, because it's the most important. It doesn't show God for whom He really is. So it doesn't allow you to have a real relationship with God. Think about forgiveness. God's forgiveness. Of course, I have to take a lot of care to not let myself sin just because I can go to confession. But being able to go to confession and receive the forgiveness for your sin. I know a lot of people don't go to a priest; they just confess straightly to God. But in both cases, just shows how God's mercy for Him to clean a sin. It's like this, because He can do it. He can wash up the worst of the sins in an instant, as long as you show that you don't want to sin again. And when you go to the Jehovah's Witnesses, understanding of this is so opposite to what Jesus teaches. It's like, well, you sin so bad, you're going to have to be 2 years away. And after those 2 years, we're going to see if you were making effort, and then you can come back. So even people so let's suppose that someone goes in, some Jehovah's Witnesses do something terrible, and they go and confess. Or no, they don't even confess. They get caught.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they get caught, and then they do their little meeting, and they decide that he's not regretting. He actually says, I don't regret it. I will do it again. So they kick him out. Well, 1 week later, this person has a meditation, feels terrible, and says, you know what, I want to change. I want to please God again. And what I did was terrible. I want to make my amends and go back to serving God. It's not going to happen, pal. You're going to have to wait a little longer because you need to see if you're really into it. So it just doesn't make sense. God forgives people in his own time. It's not, you cannot give to a man the decision to say, well, you are now forgiven or not.
No.
So that's what they do. So it's very, very sad. So those
such a good
points
point.
to make,
Yeah, it's such a good point. Just the contrast between you going in and confessing and feeling that weight come off, and versus that it's going in there and knowing that you're going to receive mercy. There's a great verse in Hebrews that says we approach the throne of grace with confidence, knowing that God is there and He's going to forgive us. But with the witnesses, it's opposite. You're approaching that throne of judgment, of saying, I know I'm going to get kicked out for this, but that's not the heart of God. When you approach Him and say, hey, this is the sin I have, and I want to get rid of it. I want to say, I'm sorry. God is faithful to forgive. It's 1 John where He says that He is, when we confess our sin, He's willing to forgive us of all unrighteousness. And for someone to hold that back and say, no, you need to be punished more, is not only unbiblical, but it's pretty sick. And
so it's something interesting is that if you're in a group that you're more worried about not being kicked out than what God thinks of you, then that group is not leading you to God. So a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are not going to confess their sins out of fear of getting kicked out.
Yeah.
So the way things should work is like, okay, you did something bad. Let's help you to reconcile with God. That's what Jesus left for His followers. Be you a Catholic or a Lutheran or a Calvinist or Baptist, whatever. This is the model that Jesus left, and they follow something completely different. And Jesus didn't even die on the cross, according to them.
No, He didn't.
So that's just so funny, because I was talking to that to my friends, and I was like, well, imagine that you find a word that can mean something else than a cross, and then you completely ignore all of the images, visual representation, oral tradition, and poems and writings about the cross, because you found that staudos actually means a pole. Cherry picking at its finest.
At its finest. It's all just to point the blame at the church. And I don't like to get too deep into it's all a demonic conspiracy and it's all the works of the devil. And granted, I do believe that in some ways. Like it's way too many coincidences. But it's been purposely done, whether intentionally or by some darkness force, that the cross, so they can point to churches or the Catholic Church or whatever and say, look at them. Look at this guy, Leo here. Look, he's got that pagan symbol wrapped around his neck. Look at that boy, that guy DH right there. He's got that pagan symbol around his neck. See, you can't trust him because that's a symbol of the devil. It is done by design so they can point the finger at everyone else, say, look at those pagans. Look at that. You don't want to go in that church. It's got a pagan symbol on it. Oh, you don't want that. And it's all, the whole Staros argument is so ridiculous. And even tiny stuff like that. Most people are like, who cares what Jesus was crucified on? Okay, fine. But this is all, the reason this is important is because truth matters. And when you start lying to people in every aspect of this religion, that carries over. And so even people that get out, like there are many ex-witnesses now that probably still believe the cross was adopted as a pagan symbol. The church adopted it. They probably still believe that. And that's going to keep them away from a relationship with God, from being a part of His body of believers because of that lie that was, and they probably think the witnesses are full of crap. Like, yeah, they're not true. But they still keep those lies. And that's why it's so important that truth is consistent across the board for everything. And some people are going to say, well, this doctrine doesn't matter. No, they all matter, because truth is worth fighting for. It's worth striving for. It's the most important. Of course, Jesus is the truth. So we should be running after that more than anything.
It's interesting that most people who leave Jehovah's Witness organization, leave by their own will or get kicked out. But like, okay, I know this is BS. They are usually not going in the direction of God.
No.
They're not going like, okay, I found God and this is the truth, and Jehovah's Witnesses are not, so that's where I'm going. They usually leave out of a grudge or a resentment, or because they felt cheated or something unfair happened to them, injustice kind of things. Like it's usually a negative. It's very, very, very rare a positive feeling getting someone out of Jehovah's religion and bringing them closer to God. Most of the time, what I see is just people saying, "I want to celebrate birthdays, so I'm not a Jehovah's Witness anymore," or "I want to go to parties and sleep with a lot of women, so I'm not going to be Jehovah's Witness anymore." So it's this kind of thing that makes me sad, because I think I'm not sure about it, but maybe it was better that you stayed there than to go out to live a life like this. I don't know. Yeah, and well, it's delicate because they do have the grace of God. I believe that if you even desire to do something good, that's already God's grace, because so they can do good things, and they do good things. They do a lot of charity, and they do a lot of they have a very, very good brotherly love. Yeah, they do have brotherly love, and they help each other a lot. They have good things, high moral standards, which I think it's something to be followed. But what's the point of having beautiful icing and cherry on the top when the dough of the cake is all rotten?
Well said. What do you think? Because you said that it was the overlapping generation that got you out. Was there anything, just real quick, was there anything in it that really convinced you it was the truth while you were in, or was it you just think maybe kind of the conditioning?
Well, the god awful way that they presented was something that was really annoying. Also, like the stupid whiteboard and
That was absurd.
it was something straight out of a South Park episode.
It was, yeah.
It was, and it's just I actually believe that Jehovah's Witnesses made a huge mistake by doing those frequent broadcasting, because they just started to contradict themselves so oftenly. Like you give them a month and they'll say something that contradicts their own doctrine. And they started to do a lot of content, and maybe they stopped paying too much attention to what they're teaching. So you get a lot of, most witnesses don't know that a lot of videos are deleted.
Yeah.
From the JW broadcasting, they don't seem to realize that it's a lot of their videos are deleted because oops, we actually shouldn't have said that. And after that, it became. I think Jehovah's Witnesses are going to lose a lot of faithful in the next years because of all of this information that they're giving out. They are getting sloppier, and with their way of because they really need to keep their lies alive and presented as the truth. They need to be careful, right? It's like someone trying to hide from the cops that they did a crime. They have to have a good planning and a good story and an alibi and all of these things. And if they start talking too much, they'll give it away. And Jehovah's Witnesses has started to talk too much. They started to do a lot of videos, weekly videos, and it's starting to get more noticeable about their own contradictions.
I want to get to this because you said back in 2015 it was the overlapping generation, and then it kind of festered until last year. It was always, and then you were still in that process of kind of figuring it out. So since 2015,
2015 kind of like shake things up a little bit. Like like I got a little bit like I don't know if I completely trust those guys, but I got into the spirit of absolute submission. So it was before that I understood what they said and I agreed with it. And after that, I didn't agree, but because I thought they were the truth, I was following them anyway. Like I have to be submissive, even if I don't understand. They understand better because they have the Holy Spirit and they're anointed and they go to heaven, and so I have to just follow them. I don't have to understand. But after I went through like I felt personally distant from God, so I knew that I had to find God, and I honestly think that it was God that saw that was the time for me. Maybe if I was in a different way, in a different time, I wouldn't saved. God knows everything already. He already knows my entire life until the day I die. So I think that was the time where he unveiled my eyes. Like, okay,
Mm,
now you can, now now I'll allow you to see. English is hard sometimes.
it is. Trust me, I know. It still feels like a second language for me. See, I can't even say it right. No, it's all in God's timing. It's amazing how He works. So, what would you say to people that are kind of still in it, whether you be in it or out, or no matter what their path is, but that are hesitant to come to God? What would be your advice to that?
Well, there's a Jehovah Witnesses song where they sing that whoever loses their family or friends will get 10 times more now and 100 more times in the future. So just keep saying that to yourself. If you love God and you know that you're not pleasing Him being a Jehovah Witness, then put all your faith in God. Put all your love in God. God loves you more than anyone else. You think your wife loves you, you think your children love you, God loves you more. And so retribute a little bit of that love to Him. If that means losing or being shunned or losing your job, um, don't think like, oh, I'm gonna suffer so much. Be actually happy that you're going to suffer. Catholics have a very beautiful thing about when something goes bad is that instead of complaining, or you can try to be happy about it and offer it as a sacrifice to God, as repentance or reparation. So it was interesting that I learned that. And a couple of weeks ago, I had dengue fever. I don't know if you're aware, if you know what it is.
Yeah,
Oh, it's awful.
I bet.
It's
I haven't
awful.
had
It
it,
was like
but
48 hours without being able to move my head from the headache,
mm,
from migraine headache. And I got myself smiling through it, like, oh God, I have a little cross now that I can bring to you and I can give to you. And thank you for this. And I didn't do it consciously. And after I started to meditate, I go, whoa, what am I doing? Am I crazy now? I should be. I had all the reasons in the world to be complaining, but I was thanking God. So if you're gonna have a hard time, if something is going to go be very difficult for you, take that difficulty, take that suffering, that anxiety, that sadness, and bring it to God. Say, God, this is my sacrifice for you. It is small. It is nothing compared to what you have sacrificed for me, but I'm bringing it to you. Like, you have your little cross and you bring it together with Jesus' cross. It's something that really bonds you with God. You will feel completely different after you experience one of the times where you genuinely did this, where you're not just like, oh, I read it somewhere, I should do. No, you actually did it. Right? Suffering so much, and you decided, you know what? I'm gonna take this suffering. I deserve it. I'm happy with it. Here it is, God, and I hope you accept my sacrifice.
yeah,
And
good. Sorry.
there's also a prayer that I like to say. It is a prayer from the Way of the Cross by Saint Jose Maria Escriva, which is abandonment to God's providence. And I think it's a very beautiful prayer. It says, my Lord and my God, into your hands I abandon the past and the present and the future, what is small and what is great, what amounts to a little and what amounts to a lot, things temporal and things eternal. Amen. And so abandon the subject to God, leave it in His hands. Even Jehovah Witnesses says this, like, if something is bothering you, trust God. So trust God. He loves you. It's not about. I know it's easier said than done, but you can do it. We all can do it. If you can bring something to God, then it will be worth it. It will be
Well said.
absolutely worth it.
Well said, man. Got chills there. That was good. It's yeah. Sometimes God has to bring us to a place where we fully need Him, so we can recognize that, because in our eternal life we fully need Him. It's not a I kind of need God. It's like no, I fully need Him in every way, shape, and form. So sometimes He has to take us low so we can see that, or allow us to be in that spot. But yeah, count it all joy, brothers, when you face trials and tribulations, for they are the building up of your character. God's goal is to build your character, and I I think if we had to plan our lives out, we would never put that in there. It would say, hey, if I had to play my life out at 18, I win the lottery. I'll also win it at 19. Marry supermodels, not one but two, maybe four or five. Have my sports team win every single Super Bowl, World Series, whatever, and never have any health problems at all. I mean, that would be our plan, but that would
I would have
not.
never,
Yeah.
I would have never have watched the new Star Wars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, episode 8 was not made, but they just stopped at 6, or they went to the actual lore books. Don't get me started on that. We'll be here all night. Yeah. Uh-huh. No, but we wouldn't plan our lives out to be, this. We would always want to have trials. We wouldn't say, oh, at this point I get cancer. Like that would just, we would erase that. But God allows that to happen, not because he's mean and vindictive, but because he's good and he allows some suffering so we can build our character. He's not a genie that just is around to make our lives great. It's a sinful world. Things happen, but he's there to comfort us through it and bring us into a right relationship with him. This has been great. I won't say closing words because we still got some time left, but anything else you want to just get out there or get off your chest or something? I mean, you kind of crushed it and you knocked it out of the park there with that last speech. So, or it can just be about how terrible Disney Star Wars is, up to you, but anything else you want to add?
I think what matters is that I would like to speak to people who are Jehovah Witnesses and maybe are watching this. First of all, you're a terrible Jehovah Witnesses. You shouldn't be watching this. This is the devil speaking. Just poison. No, but really, if you're sincerely watching this, and I know that you love everyone else. What I would like to suggest to you is to just think about the disfellowship people with more humanity. I think the way the Jehovah Witnesses treat disfellowship people, it's not only not biblical, but it's not decent. If Jehovah Witnesses are sola scriptura, right? Everything comes from the Bible. If you go to the scripture they use to justify the treatment of disfellowship, you will see that Paul gave a very specific instruction about a very specific guy who was doing a very terrible sin. And St. Paul, when he did that, society worked in a way that is not how we live anymore. The traditions were something that we have no idea what it is. The way people used to think has nothing to do with how we think today. So remember, you are taught about the difference between laws and principles. Here, St. Paul is not writing a law about how to treat someone who committed a serious sin. So, by the sake of the mental health and overall, because that's a very concerning thing among disfellowship people, treat them with kindness, like you're supposed to treat everyone. Why not disfellowship people? Why do treat people who you can treat better someone who's a rapist and a murderer who have never heard about Jehovah. You can treat him better than you can treat someone who did a mistake. So I'm not even trying to convert you. I'm just trying to give maybe change a little bit of someone's life, because who knows what can happen. Terrible things can happen when people are put in that position of feeling abandoned and betrayed. So don't let anyone feel like that. Just that's all I would have to say.
Yeah, well said. I mean, that's one of the most destructive things they do is the shunning policy, disfellowshipping, removal, whatever they call it now, whatever this new flavor of the day. This has been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing. Any last words you want to give? Advice or go for it.
Well, I would just invite everyone to go to Mass. Yeah. So just that, the sacraments, they are really, really, really good to help us to get a better relationship with God. And a good thing about Catholic is that we have a very, very tiny doctrine. It's a one-page long doctrine called the Creed. And anything else after that is devotion. So if you don't want to devote to, I don't know, Mary, it's okay. You can still be a Catholic. Just you're gonna end up liking her, but she'll grow into you. But learn the Catholic doctrine, learn the Creed. You see that it's all in harmony with the scriptures, and that you will bring the sacraments. It's a huge help. Confession and the communion, Holy Communion. Wow, what they do to you, it's unreal. I I really think that it's fundamental to our salvation.
Mm.
Then again, God is not limited to sacraments or to a church, but it's very good, and I highly recommend. And if you have a good traditional Latin mass close to you, it's also a nice try. But the world is going so modern that sometimes we need a breath of traditional air, and these traditional communities can be a very good, especially for young people. I think, as young people are usually young people who are becoming Catholics or becoming more devoted to God. They want kind of like to go back in time to where people worship God. So going to a Latin mass is kind of like that. You will find more traditional values and things like this. Well, the good thing about Catholic Church now is that we have a wide range of things that can ways that you can get close to God, which is exactly what Jesus did. He did not treat everyone in the same way. He speak to someone alone. He speak to people in big crowds. He did very different ways to approach people, and he still does it. And also, I would just like to close with a message to all my Christian brothers, that Catholic or not, that us keep praying for union between us, and not fights or division, but that we can get closer and closer together, ultimately giving all praise and worship to our Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen. Right there. Well, Leonardo, this has been fantastic. I'm going to keep praying for you, and you've got a community of people to help you and to support you, and you've got now an amazing church you're a part of. So thank you so much for sharing. You're a great guy, and I wish you all the best, man. God bless.
So I hope we can share a pint one of these days.
I hope so too, man. Absolutely. All right.